Oh yeah, I see what they call it, the TARDIS. Stupider on the inside. Hello lovelies. It's Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, which, you know, that's a significant milestone. That's longer even than Stargate in terms of how long a sci-fi show has run. I love Doctor Who, or I used to love Doctor Who. I prefer old Who. I think some of that is just nostalgia or whatever you want to call it. But there is definitely something about the output of the BBC when it comes to science fiction and fantasy, or British television as a whole in that period. There is a certain je ne sais quoi to it, whether it be Doctor Who, or whether it be Blake 7, or whether it be the TV series version of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which remains the superior version to everything else other than perhaps the radio show. And so Doctor Who holds a special place in my little black heart. I love the Daleks, I love the Sea Devils. Tom Baker is my Doctor, the best Doctor there's been. Then I think the Demons had one of the best lines ever. Chap with wings, 12 rounds rapid. Anyway, we're all gearing up for this 60th anniversary now, and there's a big charity do that happens over here in the UK called Children in Need, where they do all these special shows and stuff, and everyone tries to raise money for children in need. The clue's in the name, and you have like a telethon thing and all the rest of it. It's like Red Nose Day but shit. But as part of it, they had this telethon, and then as part of that, they had these little Doctor Who skits. And one of them included Davros. Now, this shouldn't be a problem, you know, throwaway skit, non-canonical, you would think, right? But it's caused a huge uproar amongst Whovians. I mean, you know Davros, right? Creator of the Daleks, cybernetically enhanced, you know, single eye, one arm, mobility scooter with life support gear, crippled pseudo-Nazi scientist from the planet Skaro. A man so full of himself and his intellectual superiority and his disregard for the flesh. Yeah, that he saw himself mutilated, partially mutated, enhanced with technology. He saw himself as so superior that he shaped his whole race of people after him and eliminated anyone who stood in his way. Yeah, he scoots around in that life support system, and that life support system is like half a Dalek, you know, deliberately echoing the shape and design of the Daleks, even before he actually created their Pepper Pot battle chassis. But not anymore. Apparently now he's just a gurning pseudo-Nazi. And all that other rich background and influence and psychology and everything else has all been discarded. And that's a pity. Now, Russell T Davies has insisted that this little skit is canonical, that Davros is no longer a disabled, cybernetically enhanced, partially mutated evil genius. He is just a gurning pseudo-Nazi. You know, this on top of keeping all that timeless child nonsense ongoing. And he's even been attacking fans for their being upset by the change, which goes back as long as Davros has been a thing, you know? I mean, he's been reduced to a severed head at one point. I mean, none of this makes any real sense. Like, what's going on? The architect of New Who, right? Who made a success of the comeback. A champion of progressive entertainment, the director of Queer as Folk, has erased a disabled character from a show. And the upset fans, who are supposed to be ableist, racists, all of these other things, the kind of people who are supposed to be against representation, anti-woke, whatever you want to call it, they're not celebrating the removing of a crippled character from the show and disabled representation in it. They're bemoaning it. It's almost like these issues are a little bit more nuanced, isn't it? Older fans just want to see some sort of canon, any sort of canon. Doctor Who's always been a bit wibbly wobbly on that kind of thing, but they like it. They want to see something of this long-running show of its 60-year vintage being preserved as it moves forwards. And having grown up with the show, appreciate that there were aspects of it that weren't just for kids, that were more involved and nuanced and intelligent, and and it didn't used to talk down to kids in the way perhaps New Who does. That there was this nuanced and powerful storytelling beneath this veneer of this kiddies action adventure show, or at least there used to be. The people criticising this on story grounds, on narrative grounds, historical grounds, canonical grounds and so on, I find their arguments convincing. But what I find heartbreaking are the many videos and posts and so on by disabled fans of the show, decrying this, hating that Davros has been changed. Now, I do think the importance of representation is massively overstated, and the demand for it from some quarters is largely bollocks. But there's no harm so long as the story is being served, or enhanced as in this case, if certain types of characters, heroes or villains, that there are, include many different aspects of the audience. I think representation is fine where it's organic and makes sense. There's no harm so long as the story is served. I don't think it has to be a one-for-one representation. I think it's silly to think that you have to be exactly replicated on the screen to identify with a character. But there is something to be said for it. Now, you would think that Russell T Davies would understand this, coming from where he does. I mean, queer-coded villains have been celebrated by the LGBT community for a very long time. RTD even took the homoeroticism and queer-coding subtext around the Master and made it text, arguably, to good effect. So apparently it's okay for gay people to be villains, but not us disabled folk. Is that right? It seems a bit patronising, doesn't it? I think, as a disabled person, that this is what pisses me off so much about all these representation arguments. They're patronising, they're cheap, they're surface level. A character like Davros has depth, history, personality, psychology. There's more to him than an offhand comment about dyspraxia or an "I like girls" line. And that's why I think people latched onto him, because he's a good character whose disability is something that he doesn't see as a disability, but rather his own superiority, a mind unbound by the flesh, and everything that happened to him informs his character. And it's not that far from the truth either. Exceptional ability or incapability does affect people psychologically, and not always for the better. It's a trope for a reason. And in Davros, it's not cheap, it's not exploitative, it's not a Dick Tracy villain whose entire personality is a facial deformity. It's an important part of the whole of Davros as a character. Now, I cautiously welcomed RTD returning to the fold for all his mawkishness and melodrama that tends to take control. He did make a success of New Who, but I worry when he seems to have, in the interim, forgotten whatever it was that he knew about the show and its history in the first place. Maybe Doctor Who needs its own fandom menace. Maybe you could call them hooligans or something. But then that's a whole other problem, isn't it? You speak out based on storytelling issues or other criticisms that are more nuanced, and you get lumped in with a loud handful of actual bigots, perhaps, and they provide an excuse to the person you're criticising to ignore any blowback that they're receiving. But maybe, just maybe, yeah, if he's not all mouth and no trousers, RTD should and would and will listen to the disabled fans who are upset by this, if not the Whovians who are upset by this. Maybe he'll listen to this demographic that he thought he was serving with this pointless, cheap change. Hope is so cruel, isn't it? Zang.
Put him in the curry!
Flick pig. There's no big story to this. Even the title's just a way to get away with writing fuck pig. It's not some earth-shaking attempt to thrust upon you the evils of meat eating. I eat meat because it's fucking delicious. David Cameron got me thinking about pigs. Then I got into some arguments with vegans. Then I made a horror dungeon game in which you play pigs trying to escape a horrible, fantastical slaughterhouse. That's about it. If that upsets you, do one. A print-and-play OSR dungeon crawl with pigs. Available at post-mort.com and drive-through RPG.